Kaiju Network podcast where we have a healthy obsession with kaiju. I am your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. How's it going, everyone?
So here we are, back after Jason decided to ruin his butt while walking too much in Hawaii.
Oh, it's not really that. I have really no idea what the heck happened, but I don't know. It just had a weird feeling in my legs. Was it about a couple weeks or so ago, and it just went all the way up to my tailbone and kind of the lower back area. But at least it's regressed. But now the pain's kind of in my buttocks area and then part of my calf muscle there.
Yeah, we are back. We were going to podcast last week until injury sidelined Jason. So just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a heads up before we go into housekeeping here, because the summer's going to be a little helter-skelter on my end. So this particular podcast is only going to be one of like a couple this summer. So we got this one, and then we're going to do a commentary on July 1st, because by that point we're coming back from a trip. I'm not going to have enough time to really sit down and watch the next batch of Kamen Rider by that point. So we're going to make things easier and just do a commentary that we haven't done. And then after that, there will be no podcasts until about August 12th. Mm-hmm. And what Jason and I decided at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to start, at least for a little while, doing weekly podcasts. So they may alter between Saturdays and Sundays after a short bit there. But and part of it, too, is I got kids that are involved in weekend sports activities, especially starting in the fall as well. So it'll be on those weekends. We'll try to fit them in. And what we're going to do is every week we're going to start covering about 3 episodes of the 2 shows, Spectreman and Kamen Rider. What we decided to do is, instead of alternating every episode, we're going to stick with Spectreman until it's done. Mm-hmm. And then once Spectreman is completed, we're going to do Kamen Rider until it's done. So this is actually, I think, other than the year-end episode, I think we'll probably be doing this into the early parts of next year, honestly, because both Spectreman's over 60 some odd episodes. We're just about a third of the way done with it as of this recording. Mm-hmm. And Kamen Rider's like 94, whatever it is.
Yeah, because I think we're up to 21 episodes on that show as well.
Like we're not even like a quarter of the way through with that.
Yeah, because I think when we initially talked about this before starting discussing both of these shows, I think you mentioned at one point that it was going to take maybe 2 or so years. So I was just thinking about this recently with the amount of episodes that both Spectreman and Kamen Rider have, particularly Kamen Rider in that regard, that it's going to take a long time to get through both of these shows. So I was just thinking about it recently. It's like we should maybe start doing a weekly podcast, because we haven't done a weekly podcast since our early days. I would say around 2010 when we initially started the podcast, when we were formerly Planet X Control Room at that time. So to me, it can be a little bit too much, but at the same time, at least we can power through all these week after week.
Yeah, and I think, too, we may end up potentially increasing the number of episodes we cover a week. Probably no more than 5 at the absolute max. But I said this, Jason and I were talking before we came on here, and I had said this a couple months ago with regards to Spectreman. I said, we're not that far in, and I'm already sick of this series. And so that's the reason why we're doing Spectreman first, is, like I told Jason, I want to rip that Band-Aid off quickly. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, though, too, and we kind of knew this when we started doing this, that if we kept doing things the way that we have been throughout this entire year, we were going to be sticking with these two shows for probably multiple years. And both Jason and I are kind of like, that's not only a very long time, I think we would get very, very bored of this stuff after a while too, because you're covering the same material virtually every episode, minus the rare episode where maybe you take a break and do a commentary, or you're doing the year-end episode where it's just a smorgasbord of kaiju and tokusatsu
or at least
material.
maybe take a month-long break for possibly doing something else.
Yeah, and I've made fun of Kamen Rider on this podcast, but Kamen Rider is a stupid fun, and I love Kamen Rider. Like it's one of those that it embraces what it is, and Spectreman to a certain degree does too. But Spectreman is more terrible, and like I told Jason. Both shows will break their own rules periodically, but Spectreman really goes into the deep end when it decides to break its own rules. Like it's just putting up a middle finger saying, fuck you, and diving in and saying, this is what we're going to do and you're going to like it. It's just like, okay, like on some level I find that funny. I'm making fun of the show, but at the same time, some of the stuff is like, okay, like there's one of those, it's so bad it's good, or it's so bad I can get a good laugh out of it, but some of it's so bad I'm rolling my eyes and I'm going, get me off of this ride. So anyways, let's do some housekeeping here.
Yeah, so as always, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you see a subscribe button down below, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as smash that like button as well, and leave any comments down below if you have any questions or comments or anything of the sort. And you can also find everything all in one place, Daikaiju Network related, all in one place at the Linktree /Daikaiju Network link that you see on the screen there. And as far as video platforms besides YouTube, we're on Twitch, Rumble, Facebook, and as well as Odyssey. And as well, we're on audio versions platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, as well as TuneIn. And you can find both video and audio versions of our episodes at our own website at daikaijunetwork.com.
All right, so this particular episode, we're going to cover episodes 19 through 21 of Spectreman. And so with episode 19, it is titled Blood Drinking Monster Bakula Appears.
Mine is Monstrous Termite, Part 1, Slaves of Bakula.
You gotta love Japanese titles. It's like we can just shorten that down a little bit,
Well, this is the English inserted.
Well, it's the
version.
translation, but see, like the Japanese still had to write it out in a similar fashion.
Well, this one was made by whoever made the DVD, or I think it was eighthman.com.
Well,
Whichever.
Anyways, when I first saw the title of this episode, I thought to myself, ooh, like vampires. I don't know how they're going to incorporate pollution into this, but I'm kind of like, ooh, kind of a vampire thing. This could get interesting.
Boy, you were wrong.
Nope. This is one of the most oddball tokusatsu things I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of oddball tokusatsu stuff. This thing is like banana nutters. I mean, this is just something else.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what ends up happening is one of the guys in the organization that George works for is having hi, I love you, is gonna have a child. So he and his wife want to move into a house and out of their apartment because they need more space. And George kind of finds this place, but then it's kind of taken off the market because this young couple ends up kind of, I don't know, basically paying the down payment first to the real estate agent. I mean,
Yeah,
the
it's
real
kind of
estate agent basically comes off as a greedy SOB.
yeah, some sort of rules
Um,
where you have to have a down payment in order to get a house.
yeah, and I guess George didn't have the money on hand, as he shouldn't because it's not his place.
Yeah.
But anyways, like weird well, and the episode actually starts off with a grandfather and a grandson like doing repairs to this house. Something weird happens and they're scared to death and then they disappear.
Speaking of this particular scene here, like for whatever reason, it just opens up with this grandson of the old man just like having this like having his arms up with this water bottle and just throwing it, and there's no reason to it whatsoever. It whatever Kent mentioned about earlier with this episode, it really starts off with some really nonsensical shit.
Yeah, and it's just and they see something horrible inside the house. We don't see it during this particular scene, and then once this young couple who beat George's colleague to the house, they start moving in. A weird thing ends up happening too. Like there's just kind of weird screen effects that go on, and they kind of disappear themselves. The real estate agent thinks that overnight this young couple skipped out on him and basically are not, even though their name is signed to a lease or something like that, he thinks they skipped town, and so he calls George back, George's colleague, I should say, back, saying, "Look, the house is available to you if you want." So then he's excited. He puts the down payment down. His family, well, I should say, he and his wife move in. They have a celebration there, and then I think shortly after George and all of his friends from the organization leave after this housewarming party, the young couple that had disappeared right before they moved in show up. The guy has some weird like elephant
Big monkey
ear things, and his wife is like a zombified looking girl, and the most obnoxiously elongated LSD trip ensues where
Really not necessary.
Like they start doing some weird hand gestures and voodoo stuff, whatever you want to call it. And it somehow messes with George's colleague and his wife. And it goes on way too long. Nothing too terribly exciting happens. And then long story short, they're put under like a spell or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is, I guess the guy who is supposed to be Bakula, I think, it turns out he's not really a vampire. He's a termite? A giant termite?
Actually, I think they are separate. Towards the end of the episode, now that I think about it, is that because I think it was in the next episode where they were going to be doing something to some other people, and that they were separate. That guy and Bakula, that they're just
because I thought he maybe got turned into it, but that's the thing. It's confusing, but this episode is so dull because very little actually happens. And like I was saying, this whole scene where this couple that moved in before George's friend did, they show up and they mess around with his friend and his wife, and it goes on way too long. It's all semi-slow motion. It's the weirdest thing, and I couldn't understand why they made the choice that they did for this. I thought they could have done something more exciting, maybe even slightly more violent. Either that, or they could have quickly done a quick shot of them like messing around with their heads or whatever, and then cut to a different scene with something else, and then George and his friends show up, and like his buddy and his wife are already in that trance-like state. Maybe I don't know. I mean, there are several different ways they could have handled this, and they didn't do any of those.
Again, it's just, I would just say it's just on the writers here. They probably didn't really have anything to go off.
It's sort of hard to describe other than to say very little happens and it goes on for far too long. And this whole termite deal, Bakula, because it sounds like Dracula, I thought, oh, it's a vampire type thing. I don't know, maybe Baku or something like that in Japanese maybe means termite. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far in my Japanese learning. But I thought maybe it was vampire something because it sounds like Dracula. Maybe not.
Yeah, and then after this, you had Joji pretty much interfering and then rescuing Arthur and his wife. And then you had Bakula basically growing and out of the house there, and then Joji turned into Spectreman and then battles him, destroying that particular one. However, you had the main or the second Bakula arising from the destroyed house soon after, and that's when the entire episode ends. So yeah, like just Kent said, there really wasn't much going on except for towards the end of the episode.
And I want to say, I want to put the disappearing of the grandfather, grandson, and that first couple on the real estate agent because he knew something was up, didn't say anything, didn't do anything about it, didn't prevent George's friend from moving in. He's complicit.
And speaking of which, there was a scene in this episode where a couple came in during the time where the real estate and the other guy thought the couple that moved into this house skipped out of town. You had another couple coming in, and they said that there was another house, I think it was next door, that had a sign up saying for rent or whatever it was.
It was the same house, but it's got the sign up again.
Yeah, the realtor thought that there wasn't a sign. He ran out, and then there was a sign on there. So then he said, "Oh yeah, you can just go in." And the other guy's like, "Don't." But then they started to, like a lot of shit was starting to happen shortly after, and then that's when the realtor and the other guy run off.
This is that the real estate agent being this greedy yet scared guy is actually kind of funny, and I don't know if it's I think of it as being unintentionally funny, but it's still funny nevertheless. And I've asked this before when we've covered this series. We've had plots before that don't deal with pollution because the whole premise of this series is supposed to be Dr. Gory using pollution against humanity. What does this have to do with pollution? I mean, this is another one of those where pollution, the only thing about pollution that is mentioned is when George and their female colleague that are doing the house hunting to start the episode, they're going out, and she makes a comment about, man, like it's very far from Tokyo. He's got to drive a long ways to work. And then George responds, well, people are going outside the city to escape the pollution, yet it's still following them. Like that's the only mention of pollution in the episode. And in fact, I don't think even pollution is mentioned or inferred even in this following episode.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, this is the new G Team member Margaret that he's with.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I can't. There's nothing more I can say.
Yeah, and termites and stuff, like there's not much as far as environmental reasons.
It's not exciting. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Dr. Gory, this is kind of your first fuck up. I love you, but yeah, you done goof on this one as far as not really being a pollution type of creature.
And look, I like you said, you love Dr. Gory and stuff. It's like I love Dr. Gory too, but But I'm so sick of him virtually every episode saying, "This is my greatest creation ever." And I'm like, dude, you fucked up so many times. Like, you need to shut that shit up. Like, like every episode, like there's some new weird creature that he conjures up. This is my greatest creation ever. And now Spectreman will not be able to beat me this time. Like, I'm just like, shut up, dude. Like, no, he will. Like, you're just as idiotic as your stupid ass gorilla friend there.
So, when it comes to the appearance of Bakula, I almost said Beluga.
Beluga.
I would say by far I would have to say the appearance is one of the most cartoonish things I've ever seen.
It is, because I don't think it's a suit. It's a marionette.
Yeah, because I don't ever remember it being this cartoonish. For that matter.
I mean, you could argue that the writing at points definitely has been cartoonish, but in terms of how a suit looks, not really.
Yeah.
You could still make fun of them, like the mole and catfish thing we had here not too long ago, but
yeah, at least that was
fun.
Yeah, I'd say that was better looking in this one.
Yeah. Let's just go into final thoughts and a rating on this piece of crap.
I don't really have much of a thought on this one. It's just pretty bland, not much going on except towards the end there. Maybe some interesting parts in the beginning with mysteriousness happening, but other than that, unnecessarily long scene with that voodooism type shit happening with Arthur and his wife there. It's just, yeah, probably one of the most blandest episodes I've seen by far. I give this one a D-.
You even gave it like just a hair of a passing grade?
Yeah.
Oh, for shame. You know what I'm about to give it then. So here's my final thought and rating. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, and I gave it an F. That's going to be the shortest final thought you're ever going to get from me on anything we have ever covered.
After 13 years we've been doing this podcast, that's probably your shortest one ever.
Well, I had a good run.
And that's saying something. Like, if it's something that bad, that's going to be the shortest thing ever.
I got a little bit more on this storyline to expand upon when we cover the next episode here in 2 seconds, but I'm saving it for that. So, episode 20, titled Find Bakula's Nest.
Mine is Monstrous Termite Part 2, Bakula's Nest.
Shit. Some of these fucking titles. Just take it away, Jason. Like, let's wrap up this particular storyline.
Well, the episode starts off with people running away from Bakula's terror, and he grows and starts wreaking havoc in the town there. Then you had Joji and the G team take Arthur and his wife to the hospital, with them kind of being mindless zombies in a way, and all that. And then another strange thing where Joji heads home, and then he has to recharge in a way. Like, he opens up this cabinet, turns on this whatever the fuck it is, and then just sort of sleeps. But then I think he was supposed to sleep for a certain amount of time, but then he oversleeps. And
doesn't he put his legs in it too? And only his legs?
Well, I think he just crosses legs in front of this cabinet here.
Makes no sense.
And then while he was recharging, he had the military coming in, confronting, battling Bakula, but you don't really see much after that. And then once Joji is fully recharged, he turns into Spectreman, flies off to find Bakula here. And then after a while, he believes the nest is located in Mount Fuji. And after that, you had Dr. Gori instructing Karas to nourish Bakula's eggs with human blood after building the nest within Mount Fuji. And then this is where Karas takes Arthur, his wife, and the other couple to Mount Fuji to be kind of sacrificial people to take their blood and to nourish these eggs in that regard. So Arthur starts, after a while, Arthur starts to come to his senses and is trying to break from the hypnosis that he's under. And then Joji comes in, spots the eggs in Mount Fuji, and rescues Arthur and his wife. And then, I don't know, this is probably the weirdest sizing aspect in any of the tokusatsu shows. You had Spectreman grabbing a couple of oil tankers, actual tanks in an oil refinery, with his hands. They should be probably larger than him. Throws him down in Mount Fuji. I tell you, he's probably twice the size of Mount Fuji in this freaking
we had
episode.
Aspect ratio issues with Yongari, the 1967 film. This puts that to bed as far as what is
light years ahead. Light years ahead. And destroys the eggs. You have Bakula arriving and attacking Spectreman. And when it comes to this episode, I sort of had issues with this. For whatever reason, my DVD player just froze up in this regard. I have no idea.
Your DVD player had enough of that shit.
Yeah. But I exited out and then sort of went back a couple minutes before the end of the episode where Spectreman destroys Bakula and Arthur and his wife turn back to normal and had the child born, apparently, and then that was the end of the episode.
I've lost a lot of respect for Gori during this batch of episodes. I mean, we knew Karas was really stupid, and I'm looking at Gori now and I'm like, really? I mean, Thundergay, the giant whale, was really ridiculous, but it was amazingly ridiculous. That thing was... It was one of those where it embraced its own stupidity and it knew that we knew it and it had fun with it. This is not Thundergay. This is Thunder Stupid. This is thunderously stupid. I'm just going to... Look, I've got nothing really to say. And so I'm just going to go into my final thoughts and ratings. So my final thought here, we go from one of the shortest to maybe one of the longer ones I have for a TV show that we're covering.
Uh-oh. I'm just going to mute myself.
What started as a storyline about real estate turned into something about termites that was one of the dumbest things ever. It has nothing to do with Gori's plot of using pollution as a weapon, but more importantly, this simply wasn't fun. Shit didn't make sense, and the whole idea of this vomit-inducing stupidity is beyond awful. Perhaps my patience for this show to turn into something more palatable has waned, and I'll admit, as I've done before, I am done with this series. Sure, it's had its laughs, intentionally or not, but this whole mess has been erratic and bad most of the time. As I sat watching this particular episode, I wondered if I enjoyed the show more than Ultra 7. While a really tough question to answer, I decided Ultra 7 was more watchable. Yes, it wasn't good in its own right, but it was more consistent and the writing more in line with what it had established from the beginning. But choosing between the two shows is like choosing whether you want a Triceratops to gore you to death or to have a Velociraptor eat you alive. There's no real winning regardless of which one you choose, and I gave it an F.
Yeah, so I'll probably just do my shortest thing. Terrible F.
you need a sound bar, and you need to have Charles Barkley and just hit terrible. That's terrible. All right, this is going to be a short podcast. Moving along.
It's fine by me.
Episode 21: Mysterious Alien Zuno versus Gilligand.
Mine is the Zuno Man, Part 1. Body Snatcher.
All
Jason
right,
doesn't belong in this one.
Well, you do. You're here, right? So
talking about the other one.
You're the same thing. So
fuck off.
All right, take it away, story man.
I'll let you do this one.
An alien named Zuno comes down. He takes the form of people, and takes the form of. He fights Karas, and the fight is so hysterical. I'm actually going to give this episode a pretty passing grade when all is said and done. And then it's a to be continued, where Gilligand is a monster that is concocted by Karas, and then Gory comes along, and then it has a weird Japanese preparation dance that it does before fighting, or is it after Spectreman? One of the two.
Before.
Yeah. It's been a week since I've seen this episode. So, and then, this one was a bit more watchable, but again, I'm not holding my expectations up too high.
At least with this one, you had Zuno Man, who was disguised as one of the residents that was talking to Joji and the GT member earlier. He overpowered Karas in this one.
Yeah.
Pretty handily, and paralyzed Karas. And I think towards the end there,
it's not hard to do.
When he killed off the body that he was using, I think he was about to take over Karas's body, but we don't get to see that. We'll probably see it in the next episode. But at least with this episode, out of all three of them, this one's the best one.
I would even argue this is one of the better ones of the series so far. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we covered Ultra 7, it seemed like about every 5 or 6 episodes we ran into something where you and I both said, hey, that was actually pretty good. Maybe the series will turn a corner, and no, it never did. And so that's why I'm a little excited about the part 2 of this storyline, because I'm like, oh, not only will it maybe continue with the next one, maybe it'll continue in the episodes after that. I'm like, remember what you're watching.
However, the one gripe that I have with this one is at the beginning when Zuno Man crashes on Earth and says that he, says it kind of in a fourth wall here, that he needed help and everything, and then wondering if the species on this planet is hostile or not. But then he goes off snatching or taking over the bodies of these people and then killing them and everything. And it's like you're questioning if they were helpful or hostile towards anyone that's entering the planet, and then that you needed help. You think that you're, maybe some kind of good alien in that regard, but you just decided on your own, without not even hesitating, just start killing them, and you wonder why these people are being hostile towards you.
Yeah, well,
hello,
it's just it's one of those things that it really it's Spectreman being Spectreman again. I mean, like we've been saying before, I just again, it's really goofy, but I do enjoy this. I mean, he's more or less an alien that crash landed here. He needs a ship, which is why he eventually wants to take over Karis's body, because Karis says something to the effect of like, my master and I were like blah 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 blah, and so he realizes, oh, you got a master, which means you got a ship. So I'm going to take over your body, then your ship, and go home. So it's got an interesting storyline, and you talk about it taking over Karis, and it's like, that's not really hard to do, because when you've looked at Karis over 21 episodes now, you realize, other than having the ability to Super Mario people's heads into their bodies, this guy is really a pushover, and it's not very hard to, overpower him. And so Mumbles the monkey, is easily wiped out here by Zuno in a human body. But I do like this aspect of this story, because every time Zuno takes over a person, it somehow ends up killing that individual that he inhabits. And I like, even though Zuno more or less is kind of a blob-like individual with one eye,
or a tentacle,
I kind of like this. Yeah, I mean, there's something about this design has always sort of intrigued me. Like, I'm not in love with it, but I like it enough to where I go with it, and I would love to see.
It's kind of that usual. It's kind of that usual design that we see in a tokusatsu episode.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I would love to see, like, maybe a storyline that takes place over a handful of episodes, where maybe the Zuno people like come and try to invade Earth as well, and you got a three-way going on between like Gory and Karis versus the Zuno people, and then Spectreman as well. I think something like that could be interesting, and I think you could do it in a way too, to where they aren't spending a huge ton of money doing it as well, because we all know, as you watch this series, there's not a lot of money in it to begin with, but I think it's doable if they choose to do so. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this, because I'm not expecting it to happen.
Yeah.
But I think this would be cool, because Zuno having, like I said, having this three-way coming, having this extra monster having this extra monster that is not created by Gory come in, who is dangerous in his own right and is sort of a threat to him as well. I like that sort of thing. I have always enjoyed it, like the 2002 He-Man series, when you had King Hiss coming in, and then right at the tail end Hordak coming in as well. When you have villains kind of competing with other villains along with the hero, there's something really fun that is to be had there. And I've always enjoyed those storylines, because it creates more drama, there's more action, it raises the stakes naturally as well. And I really, not only am looking forward to the second part of this, but I would just in general like to see something similar to that within the series.
Well, let's just hope and pray to God that it does not end terribly for part 2.
It's Spectreman. I mean, again, like I said,
expectations are low at this point.
I am one of those people that is hopelessly optimistic with some things, and very naive to some degree as well with certain things. But I have to keep reminding myself with something like this, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is good. Like, I'm hoping the next one is really good, and maybe finally the series will get really good. And it's like, no, wait a minute, dude. Just like I said earlier, remember what it is you're watching, and take a look at the track record so far. Because, yeah, maybe the next one's good, but I guarantee you, by that episode that follows, nope.
Yep. Yeah, so we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have pretty much low expectations from this point on. And
the thing is that we're not going to know until about mid-August, because that's the next time we're going to cover anything from this series. So we're going to have to wait almost 2 months to see the conclusion of this.
Yep.
Which might be a good thing, I guess, but
Yeah. So the pressure bounce.
yeah.
But anyways, if you don't have anything else, I don't know. I can probably do my final thoughts on this one, or if you want to do your final thoughts.
Yeah, I can go ahead, go first.
Okay.
A better written episode that, however, doesn't deliver much on entertainment, but a fair amount of the anticipation. The battle between Gilligan and Spectreman leaves a lot to be desired, as does the tangle between Zuno and Karas. With that said, the story is one of the better ones in the series so far, if not the best. There is this possibility of the first Kaiju versus Kaiju battle in this series should the next episode follow through on that. However, given the show's lousy track record, I'm more apt to believe such a thing may not happen. The first 2 episodes of this batch were truly atrocious, and this one redeemed the show a little bit. But we all know, after having gone through nearly a third of the series at this point, that this is a blip in the radar, a rare gem in a mound of shit. Nevertheless, I'm hopeful this storyline will be one of the better ones when it's all said and done, and I gave it a B-.
That's much much better.
I told you it was a better.
Yeah, this one, at least out of the 3 batches of episodes that we've discussed so far today, this one is by far the best one out of the 3 episodes for our discussion today. So, and yeah, the story is pretty good, although, as I stated, the glaring, obvious gripe that I had from the beginning, as far as Zuno Man, thinking that we think that he needs help in everything, not being hostile, or thinking if they're hostile or not, needing help from humans and all that. But then he just, without hesitation, just starts killing them without them doing anything to him in that regard. So that just kind of make things probably the worst part of the whole writing right there. But other than that, the design of Zuno Man is really good. I would say it's sort of up to par with a lot of the tokusatsu villains or henchmen during that time in the day. And you had this Gilligan. It's kind of an odd looking thing with a sword on one end of his elbow there, and then you had a little drill bit on the other elbow.
Like a weird insect-like head.
Yeah, like big eyes and all that, but not cartoonish compared to Bakula.
It's pushing it though.
Yeah, and then you had kind of that weird lawn dance thing, which was a bit unnecessary again, just like 2 episodes ago. But at least with the good writing, some of the good designs of Zuno Man and Gilligan here, I would say those overpower that goofiness and sort of the bad part as far as the story in the beginning stage of this episode. So pretty good so far. We're gonna have to wait till about close to a couple months till what happens in part 2 of this. I'm still gonna have low expectations on this one with how Spectreman has been going so far. Really let me down quite a bit. Not what I expected from what I remember many years ago. But so far, episode 21 is pretty good. So I give this one a C+.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us on this short episode of Daikaiju Network Podcast. Again, here in a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a commentary, and that will be our last podcast for roughly a month and a half. And then we will be back to discuss and to continue for a while on more Spectreman. So get your galoshes and your shovels and your rain jackets ready, because I expect us to be shoveling shit. And And so, with that, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully, you guys have a good summer because, again, we're not going to be around a whole lot. So,
Well, and before we sign off here, if you're watching us on YouTube, once again, if you see a subscribe button down below, make sure to subscribe to Daikaiju Network and as well as smash that like button. And if you have any comments or questions, whichever, you can leave all your comments down below this video. And you can find everything Daikaiju Network all in one place at our Linktree URL right on your screen there /Daikaiju Network. And as far as YouTube being our video platforms, we're on Twitch, Rumble, Facebook, and as well as Odyssey. And we have audio platforms where we have audio versions of our episodes on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, as well as TuneIn. And you can find both video and audio episodes on our own website at DaikaijuNetwork.com. So, other than that, thank you guys, and we will see you next time.